Wednesday, October 4th. I typed these journal entries in my homework assignments on the little PC clone up in my bedroom. For anything major, like a school report, I use Dad's big IBM, which is down in an alcove off the great room. Dad has a CD-ROM encyclopedia, a fax modem, and a web navigator that gets hundreds of information services. I can find out anything about anything without ever leaving the chair. Tonight I was down in the alcove searching for information on tangerines when Mom announced, "I've got people coming over tonight, Paul. You might want to work upstairs." "Who's coming?" "It's a meeting of the Homeowners Association. I think it's going to be a loud one." "Why's that?" "Mr. Costello has been getting a lot of phone calls about a lot of different things. There's the termite problem, and there have been break-ins over on his side of the development." "Robberies?" "Yes. People are talking about organizing a neighborhood watch patrol or even hiring a real guard to sit in the guardhouse." She stopped and looked at me. "You haven't heard anything about break-ins, have you? Are kids involved?" "I haven't heard a thing." "Joey hasn't said anything to you?" "No." The doorbell rang. I went back to search as the homeowners started to arrive. I could hear them file in behind me. The yellow Tudor, the York with the 3-car garage, and a loud group from Joey Street, the street where all the houses are getting blue tents put over them. I stopped working when Mr. Costello came in. I rolled my chair to the entrance of the alcove so he could see me. "Hi, Paul. How's it going?" "Fine, Mr. Costello." Mr. Costello's face has looked lined and tired ever since Mike got killed. He carried a thick black appointment book in one hand. He walked to the kitchen end of the great room and said quietly, "All right, let's get started." The meeting began like the town meetings we used to have in social studies class. Treasurer's report, old business, new business, I move, I second the motion. I had turned my attention back to the computer screen when I heard a man call out, "What's with Donnelly's house? It looks like something that landed from outer space." I rolled my chair back and watched Mr. Costello. He checked his notes and said, "All right, Mr. Donnelly applied for permission to install a lightning rod on the roof of his house. The architectural committee, because of his unique problem, did approve that addition. But then, for some reason, Mr. Donnelly went and installed a series of 10 lightning rods across the top of his roof. It does look odd." "It looks like hell." Mom spoke up. "The architectural committee has sent Mr. Donnelly a strongly worded letter about it. I think he clearly took advantage of us." "What are you going to do about it?" "As I just said, we sent him a letter. I had hoped he would show up tonight so we could work this out. If he doesn't respond, we will take further action." Another homeowner stood up. "I've been keeping track of our fish population, what there is of it, and I'd like to announce that it is now down to 0. As far as I can tell, we have 0 fish left in that pond." Mr. Costello nodded grimly and flipped to another page. "You're probably right, Ralph. The koi appear to be all gone. We're not sure why, but we think someone may have stolen them." I thought, "Think again, Mr. Costello. Your koi are a gourmet meal for the ospreys out on Route 89. Another voice called out, "What about the muck fire?" Mr. Costello knew right where to flip for this one. "All right, we've certainly heard your complaints about the muck fire, and we certainly share your distaste for it. Since our last meeting, Mr. Porter and I have contacted the Tangerine Fire Department on 3 different occasions." Mr. Costello began to read directly from his notes. "The captain there basically told us that he can't do anything about it. We said, 'Why don't you pour water on it until it goes out?' And he said, 'Why don't you?' So we did." Mr. Costello slammed his book closed with one hand. "We hired a contractor to sink 4 wells in the muck fire field. We rented pumps and spraying equipment and started saturating the area last month. To make a long story short, the muck fire is still burning, and now we have swarms of mosquitoes breeding in the swamp that we created out there." I heard Mom speak up again. "These mosquitoes carry encephalitis. 2 children died in Tangerine last year after they were bitten by mosquitoes." Mr. Costello nodded gravely. "Right. We've already contacted the county about it. They have a spray truck that is for hire. Starting tomorrow night, they will drive through our development spraying a cloud of insecticide every other evening until the mosquito problem is under control. Do not, I repeat, do not allow your kids to ride their bikes behind the spray truck. They'd be inhaling a powerful pesticide. Also, you should keep your pets inside, and you should move any delicate plants from your porches, patios, whatever, into the house." Everyone got quiet at the thought of the spray truck spewing insecticide every other night. Finally, the man who had asked about Mr. Donnelly's house said, "Okay, what about all the robberies?" Mr. Costello opened his book once again and addressed the man. "The sheriff's department has assigned someone to our case, Sergeant Edwards." He looked at the rest of the homeowners. "For those of you who don't know, 5 of the houses that were tented for bugs have been robbed of jewelry, watches, and other valuables." The man interrupted. "My lawyer tells me that the exterminator is required by law to either post a guard or to arrange for guards to patrol around the houses that are tented." "That may be true, Dan, but our local guy says he is not aware of that law." He should have been. It's his business. Maybe so. But I've talked to the guy, and his attitude is that you'd have to be crazy to go into a house that's been pumped full of deadly poison. Therefore, there's no real threat of anyone doing it. But somebody is doing it. Somebody busted in my patio doors with a baseball bat, too, and whether his attitude likes it or not, he's liable for that and for my missing property. Mr. Costello turned his palms upward. He answered patiently, "If you think you have a case against him, then by all means pursue it. But it is really worth your time. Is it really worth your time and money to hire a lawyer and go to court just to make some guy's dilapidated pickup truck go away? Because that's what it'll come down to. That's just the way it is around here." The homeowners just sat there glumly until Mr. Costello said, "Okay." Somebody moved to adjourn. I turned back to the computer as the meeting broke up. I took out the disk and got into Dad's personal library looking for another information service. I saw a file listing that had definitely not been there before. I would never have missed seeing this. Eric, scholarship offers. I looked around for Dad. He and Mom were saying goodbye to people in the foyer, so I clicked on Eric, scholarship offers. The file was 2 pages long. It was carefully designed, like someone had spent a lot of time thinking about it. Each page was filled with rectangular boxes stacked on top of each other. But get this, the boxes were light green football fields with white grid lines at the 10-yard intervals. Over the green and white fields, printed in red, were vital statistics. Each box contained the name of a university, its address and phone number, and the name of its head football coach. The top 3 boxes on page 1 were set up for the University of Florida, Florida State University, and the University of Miami. Ohio State had a box on it, page 1. So did Notre Dame, Penn State, and the University of Nebraska. It didn't look like any of these schools had expressed any interest in Eric. Not yet. I scrolled to page 2 and found some had. Rice University, Baylor University, and the University of Houston had sent letters to Eric. From the dates of the letters, they must have all contacted him at the same time, right after his junior year season in Houston. Dad apparently had not written back to any of them. I heard the front door close, so I quickly clicked out of the file. But I'll be back. Thursday, October 5th. Joey didn't come to school today. I wasn't surprised. I know exactly where he was. He was in the office at Lake Windsor Middle School, re-enrolling. It's the right thing for him to do. It's the right place for him to be. I never should have talked Joey into coming to Tangerine. He doesn't fit in here. I should have seen that. Joey's not me. Joey fits in with his family. He fits in with his friends. He fits in with Lake Windsor Downs. That's where he belongs. That's where he is now, and that's all there is to say about it. Right before science class began, I went up to Teresa and handed her 6 pages of research. She seemed pleasantly surprised, and I said, "So what's up with Tino?" She said not much and started to look at my papers. "Does the coach know that he got suspended?" "Yeah, I guess so. Everybody else knows." "Is he going to miss tomorrow's game?" "No, he's coming back tomorrow." "Yeah, I heard he got 3 days." Louise went in and talked to Dr. Johnson. She said that since Tino didn't actually hit anybody, she'd reduce his time out to 1 day. "Oh, that's cool." Teresa stopped, thumbing through my report. She looked me right in the eye like she never had before. "Yeah, look, Paul Fisher, you got to understand one thing. You can't come in here and start talking about Louise any way that you like. Louise means too much to us." I nodded quickly. Yeah, I understand. "Tino and Victor, they don't play that kind of stuff. I told them last night that they should leave you alone, but you better tell your friend to keep out of their way." I thought about that. I don't think he goes to school here anymore, and I don't think he counts me as his friend. Not anymore. "Well, I don't know anything about that. I'm just telling you what I'm telling you." She pulled a piece of white paper out of her back pocket. "Here, this is a map to our house. Henry's coming over after practice to meet Louise. If you want to meet him, you can come too." I stared at the map and at the large black X marking their house. As coolly as I could, I said, "So what about Tino? What do you mean? He won't be mad if I come?" "No, why would he?" I shrugged. The stuff with Joey. "You're not Joey, are you?" "No, but is he mad about getting suspended?" "You're not the one who got him suspended, are you?" I shook my head and said no, but I thought to myself, not this time anyway. I went over to Henry D., and we wound up working out a great plan. Henry's brother was going to drive him from Tangerine Middle School to Teresa's house, come back to get him, and then drive over to Lake Windsor Downs to do a job. Henry said that he and his brother would be pleased to drop me off right at my door. I called Mom and explained the plan. She sounded doubtful, but she agreed to let me do it. At practice, the coach put me in at Tino's position. I played poorly, but nobody seemed to care. It was just temporary. Tino would be back tomorrow. After practice, I followed Henry D. to the parking lot. We walked up to a small blue pickup truck and climbed in. Henry said, "This is Paul. This is my brother Wayne." Wayne Dilks? I knew him right away, the fireman. The young guy who had come to our house about the muck fire. He gave me a friendly hi, but I don't think he recognized me. Anyway, he didn't say anything as we drove east toward the groves, listening to a country music station. Soon we were flying past perfect rows of citrus trees, and that glorious scent was in the air. I saw a large wooden sign that said Tomas Cruz Groves Nursery. Wayne slowed to 5 miles per hour and turned right onto a dirt road. We bumped along past an oblong pond 50 yards across, ringed all around with tall cattails. Behind the pond, on higher ground, was a grove of trees, hundreds of them, all about 10 feet high and 6 feet wide. Water sprinklers rose tall among the green trees like skinny metal weeds. We bumped to the left toward several buildings, a house, a separate garage, a small shed, and another strange-looking building. The house was large, 2 stories high, with old shade trees around it. It appeared to be built of cement blocks covered with a kind of mustard-colored stucco. We rolled in a cloud of dust past the house, pulled up next to the classic green Ford, and climbed out in front of that other building. Wayne said, "I'll see y'all in an hour," and backed out, leaving us standing before one of the strangest structures I have ever seen. It looked like a gigantic tin can that had been cut in half lengthwise and then pressed down into the ground. I asked Henry, "What is this thing?" "It's a Quonset hut. They had a lot of them left over after World War II. Some of the citrus farmers bought them cheap as war surplus." "Yeah? Did you find that out in your research?" "Yes, I did." Henry knocked on the wooden door of the Quonset hut. I looked up and figured that the door was 6 feet tall and that the hut was 12 feet tall at its highest point. At its lowest points, the end stuck right into the ground. Tino opened the door and said, "Yo, Henry D." Then he turned back inside without acknowledging me. I followed Henry and Tino to the far end of the Quonset hut, about 20 yards down through the cool, dark, windowless building. The sides, where the metal ceiling curved down to the cement floor, were jammed with wooden crates, sprinkler heads, wheelbarrows, and all kinds of equipment. We joined Teresa and Louise at the rear door. Teresa pointed at us and said to him, "That one's Henry D., the other one's Paul Fisher." Louise smiled. He had large teeth inside a large head. He had a strange shape, too, bony and muscular at the same time. His arms, his legs, his whole body were like thick rope. Louise said, "Good to see you guys." His voice was soft, seemed accented more than Tino's or Teresa's. He walked ahead of us, limping as if his left knee would not bend. He led us out of the Quonset hut toward the weather-beaten trees on a hill north of the house. Louise stopped at about 5 rows in, pointed around him, and said, "This is a grove. We grow a fruit here called the Cleopatra Tangerine, and we sell it to citrus packers and juice companies. Our family has done that for 45 years now." Louise doubled back and we followed. We turned left at the hut and soon came to an open space, as long as a soccer field, but square in shape. Here the trees were like babies, only 1.5 feet high, and spaced not much more than 1 foot apart. There must have been 1,000 of them. Louise sat down next to one of the baby trees, so we all copied him. He said, "Look around you. This is a nursery. The purpose of a nursery is not to grow fruit. It is to grow trees. We then sell these trees to fruit growers." Louise placed a long finger at the base of the baby tree. This part of the tree is called the rootstock. It is the root and trunk of a rough lemon tree. Believe it or not, every type of tree that we produce here begins its life as a tough lemon tree. His finger rose 6 inches to the knobby beginning of a branch. At this spot, we cut a slit into the rough lemon tree, set a new type of bud inside, and closed the slit up with tape. Now we have turned the tree into something else, perhaps a Valencia orange tree or a red ruby grapefruit tree. The new bud that we grafted onto the rootstock is called a scion. The word scion means like a child or a descendant of the tree. Luis pointed his arm back to the tall trees. "Check this out. A scion can be any kind of citrus that you want, orange, grapefruit, lemon, lime, and they can all be growing on the same tree at the same time. That means that on one little tree, you could have a branch of white grapefruit, a branch of red kumquats, and a branch of green limes, like some kind of Frankenstein fruit tree all stitched together." He caressed the trunk of the baby tree. "The rough lemon is totally worthless in the supermarket. Yet there is no more valuable tree out here in the nursery." Luis got to his feet, flushed with feeling. He pointed to the 1,000 baby trees before us. "If you look out here, you'll see that all these trees are the same. On each there is one scion grafted onto a rough lemon rootstock. That scion is a new type of tangerine called the Golden Dawn." Luis stared with us at the field that he had created. Then he turned and led us back through the rows of adult trees. He pointed out different types of citrus trees, including some Frankenstein experiments of his own. He answered many questions from our report. All too quickly, we were back at the Quonset hut. Henry D. looked out the door and announced, "Wayne's waiting." I walked up to Luis and offered my hand to shake. He took it in powerful rope-like grip. I said, "Thank you. I'm really interested in this stuff." He answered, "Then you should come again." I said, "I'd definitely like to." I turned toward Teresa and Tino. "See you guys later." Teresa waved. Tino acted like he didn't hear. I followed Henry D. through the door and then stopped short. There, attached to the back of Wayne's pickup truck, was a short trailer. It had a fat, heavy generator mounted on it, with a large fan and a spray nozzle on either side. I said, "What on earth's that?" Wayne answered cheerfully, "It's a sprayer for y'all's mosquitoes." We bumped along with the sprayer behind us, all the way to Lake Windsor Downs. As soon as we turned into the entrance, Wayne spotted the blue tents along Joey's street. "Look at that now," he said. "Y'all are having a regular 10 plagues of Egypt over here, aren't you?" "Yeah," I said, 10 and counting." "How many houses got termites?" "It looks like the whole street has them." "All along the west side." Then that's where they buried the citrus trees," he said. "This was a grove, you know." "Yeah, so I've heard." "It was all groves around here. When they cleared this land for houses, they just set fire to all the trees and plowed them under. You see how that whole blue tent seems to be on a hill? Yep. That hill's made of dead trees, dead tangerine trees. Termites live in all that wood under the ground, but they got to come up to the surface to get water. That's where your problems start. If the wood in your house is in their way, they start eating that." I said, "You can stop them though, right? You can kill them? You can call the Orkin army or something." Wayne shook his head. "You can't stop them. You can put a barrier around your house, that's about it. But you can't stop them from eating wood any more than you can stop that muck fire from burning or them mosquitoes from sucking blood." "We were at the house," I said. "Here it is." I got out and looked at the spraying rig. "You guys gonna turn this thing on now?" Wayne smiled. "Yeah, we're gonna let her rip. We'll kill some of them skeeters for you anyway." I said, "Thanks for the ride, Wayne. See you, Henry." Wayne waved. He reached under his seat and handed something to Henry. Then in the same motion, they both pulled black rubber gas masks on over their faces. They sat there for a minute looking like a pair of ant-men who had stolen a truck. Then Wayne got out, walked back, and pulled the starter cord on the generator. I watched as the rig coughed and sputtered to life. Then I backed away and hurried inside. I dropped my stuff in the alcove and went into the kitchen for a drink. Out of the corner of my eye, I detected two people in motion, and I heard the poop, poop, poop sound. I knew that Eric and Arthur were practicing in the back. Would they stop when they smelled the insecticide? I got a soda and stood at the breakfast bar waiting to see what they would do. I saw a billowing white cloud enter the backyard like an angel of death. It came from the right to the left in white waves and quickly filled up the whole yard. But as I watched the scene, it happened again, just like in Houston. Just like at the Gray Wall, a feeling came over me, overpowering me, like I had to remember something, whether I wanted to or not. I stared hard into the backyard. First I could see Eric and Arthur, then I couldn't see them, then I could see them, then I couldn't, and I remembered. Our backyard in Huntsville. Mom and Dad were standing in front of me. Dad was directing Eric to move in a circle around and behind me. Dad was saying, "Okay, Eric, pretend that Paul is in the center of an imaginary clock and that I am standing here at 6 o'clock position. I want you to stand at the 12 o'clock position right behind him. Good. Now move to the 11 o'clock position." Then he said to me, "Paul, can you see Eric?" And I said, "No, I can't see him." "Okay, Eric, move to 10 o'clock. Paul, can you see him?" "No, I can't see him." "Move to 9 o'clock. I can't see him. I can't see him." Mom broke in. "It's okay, honey. It's okay." She said to Dad, "There, I told you, the problem is with his peripheral vision." Suddenly, I felt the hot breath of a predator on my neck. I screamed in terror. Eric laughed and ran over to Mom and Dad. He had snuck up on me from behind, from somewhere back around 10 o'clock. Dad snapped at him. "Eric, cut that out. Are you here to help us or not?" I remember that I started to cry in the middle of that pretend clock, but Mom and Dad did not notice. They were arguing about my eyes or about my glasses. Mom finally said, "Well, it won't hurt to try, will it? I'm taking him back there tomorrow to see what they can do." And she did. That was when I got my new glasses. That was when I started to see better. From that day on, I could see things that they could not. I could see Eric posing in front of them in the shining light of the football dream, and I could see Eric lurking behind me in the shadows of the clock.